So as you can see, we are packing up all of our stuff and we are leaving Fox Glacier, where we've been working in a holiday park for the last 3 months. So we had actually planned on staying here until around about the end of April, maybe start of May next year, but just like most things in our lives, it didn't go to plan, and due to some unforeseen, unpredictable circumstances that I can't actually talk about, we're having to leave earlier than planned. Is there any good lighting in this house? So I think we're both feeling at the moment a mixture of feelings. It's very strange because we are starting a new chapter / adventure, which is always exciting, and the endless possibilities that are lying ahead of us. But at the same time, we were looking forward to spending another summer here in Fox Glacier. We've been living in this wee house for 3 months now, and it's starting to feel like a proper wee home, and now we're quite suddenly having to leave. We've had some really good times in this wee house. We're definitely taking some good memories away with us, and I'm making this video to tell you about the best memory that we're taking with us. That is the memory of our wee cat Salem. Technically, he's actually not our cat. We didn't purchase him, nor did we have a particularly long time with him. He was kind of like more of a roommate. So this house that we've been living in, this house that you see behind me here, this is actually Salem's house. And I say that because he's lived here in the holiday park longer than anybody else. Nobody knows where this cat came from, nor do we know when he arrived here. He's outlived everyone that's currently working in the holiday park. And that's why we say that this is house, because we just moved in here with Salem. He was already here. We moved in, we became his roommates. But we weren't his first roommates. We know he had roommates from all over the world, from Ireland, Austria, the United States, and probably many, many more before we even arrived in New Zealand. But unfortunately, Kalisi and I were Salem's last roommates. So a few weeks ago, we woke up expecting to live out our usual routine of feeding Salem before we went to work. Now, normally there's absolutely no chance that we could ever forget to feed Salem, because he would literally just scream at you from the moment you walked in the room to give him his breakfast. And actually quite often we would actually be awoken by the sound of him scratching on the doors, because he was so impatient that we were still asleep and not coming to give him his food. But this particular morning, there was no scratching, there was no screaming for breakfast. I came through to the living room expecting all of the usual antics from him, but he wasn't even there. It was eerily quiet. So I looked outside the window onto the decking area, and he was there. He was lying on the deck in the sunshine, and I thought it was unusual because he loves his food, but at the time I didn't think there was anything wrong, and I welcomed it as like a unusual change, and just like a welcome sort of change in his behaviour for that morning. It was just a nice change to being screamed at. So an hour or so later, we've had our own breakfast, and we've brushed our teeth. We're ready to go to work, and he still hasn't come in for his food. And at this point I was like, that is so unusual, because again, he loved his breakfast and his food. There was no chance he was going to be missing it. So I looked out the window and he wasn't there. The last place I'd seen him was on the deck, lying in the sun, and he was gone. And that was really worrying. We couldn't find him anywhere. We had a quick look before we went to work, and we thought, he's obviously just gone off on a little adventure like he sometimes does, just goes and explores places. He goes to visit the chickens that are living in an area in the park just across from the house. So we decided we're going to put the food in his bowl, we'll leave the window open. He would always come in and out the living room window. He'll come in when he's ready, and he loves his food, so he's not going to be long. He'll be back in and he'll eat that, and that'll be fine. We'll be back to normal. So we both went to work, and I came home for a short break about 3 hours later. I came into the living room and I looked at his bowl, and it still had his food in it. He's nowhere to be found. I can't see him anywhere. I knew something was wrong. That way you can just feel it inside. There's something is not right today. Something's wrong. Now, I've never owned a cat before, but I was aware that cats, when the end is coming, they know it, and they have a natural instinct to go off, isolate themselves somewhere quiet away from people, and just die peacefully on their own. And based on everything that was happening, I kind of guessed that was the situation, and I told Kalisi, and she didn't take it very well. Kalisi was devastated. she had to take some time away from work to just sit on the bed, and she was crying, and she was looking for him as well. She couldn't find him, and I think she was just really hoping that she would have closure with him. This is an open-ended thing. We don't know where he is, if he's okay. We didn't know if we could help, and we just felt kind of useless not knowing where he was, even though that is a cat's natural instinct to do that. I tried to explain that to her, but she was just feeling really sad about not having that closure. She was also feeling guilty, started saying things like, oh, I should have cuddled him more, or we should have spent more time with him, and then you feel guilty for any little time where you might have been frustrated with him. And it's all pretty, fairly typical feelings to have when you're facing a sudden loss like that. So after crying for a while, Kalisi finally managed to find some sort of composure and head back to work. And she left the house, and she made her way through the car park of the holiday park towards the reception area. And that's when she came across Salem. And she said herself, she thought she was imagining it. She thought that the stress of the situation was causing her to almost hallucinate and see the cat. Like her mind was showing her what she wanted to see so badly. But he was real, and he was there, and she said that he just seemed a bit confused, seemed like he didn't know where he was, and she just picked him up, she grabbed him, she came into reception where I was working, and she was like, I found him, and she had him in her arms, and we were both felt that relief that we finally knew where he was, and that whatever happened from this point on, we were gonna have that closure with him. If this was his last days, then we would at least be around to comfort him through it. So we brought him back into the house because we knew he hadn't even eaten that day because his food was still in his bowl. We brought him back in, pointed him in the direction of his food, and it was at that point we noticed that he was limping, and it seemed like he couldn't use his back left paw at all. In fact, when he tried to put weight on it, he definitely was in discomfort, but the paw was actually bending the opposite way of what it should do. And he just seemed to be in a lot of pain and discomfort, and he would take a few steps and he would just give up and lie down. I brought his food and his water over to him, and he had absolutely no interest in it whatsoever. And again, I want to stress that was not like him. He lived for 3 things: sleeping, cuddles, and food. So we knew at this point that we were going to have to take him to the vet. He was in so much discomfort and pain that there was no other option but to take him to the vet. This wasn't going to go away by itself as far as I could tell. But the only problem was that the nearest vet clinic is a 2.5-hour drive away from here, so there was no way we were going to get him an appointment and get him there today, and we still had our shift to finish as well. So we just made him as comfortable as possible on the couch. He lay there all day. He slept with Kalisi all night. I slept in the spare room, and that was the last night that we had Salem in the house. So the next day we all got in the car and we headed north 2.5 hours to a place called Hokitika, and that's where the vet clinic was located. We popped a pillow and Kalisi's onesie into a washing basket to try and make it as comfortable for him as possible during the car journey, but he hated it. I could tell he hated it. But we made it there, and we sat outside in the car and we waited for the vet to finish up with her other appointment, and it was really, really sad. Good boy. We had high hopes that the issue wouldn't be serious, but at the same time, being realistic, we kind of anticipated that the vet's advice, based on how old Salem was, the vet's advice would be to euthanize him and put him out of his misery. Everyone at this vet clinic, including the vet, were so lovely. She was amazing.
He's a bit dehydrated. Has he been drinking?
He's not been eating or drinking since that happened.
Since it happened. Okay.
No, you don't like that.
No, he doesn't.
He's got a good nature though.
Yeah.
She was so nice to Salem, and she gave him a quick examination, and she believed that he actually had a tumor on his upper thigh, and that was the reason for him losing the use of his paw. because we originally thought that maybe he'd been hit by someone or something, or a car had hit him, but he had absolutely no external injuries to the paw. There was no cuts or bruises or bleeding or anything like that. Just sudden immobility in that paw. She said that she couldn't be sure without an x-ray about any possible treatments, but based on his age, she believed that he wouldn't survive any treatments or surgery for that matter. And at this point she advised us that the kindest thing to do would be to euthanize him and end his suffering. And that was a really horrible thought, but we had to agree with her and do the best thing for our roommate.
So you can see I've just popped that wee catheter in there, and then what I'll do is I'll grab the injection and we just give the injection through that. Alright. Nice, sweetheart.
Ready?
Ready? It's alright, darling. Here, look.
Good boy.
There we go, chicken.
So quick.
Yeah, I know there's no nice way to go, but that's quite an easy way, and he just kind of drifts off. I'm just gonna check really hard.
It was a really hard and horrible decision to make, but ultimately I think that we did the right thing. Salem got to leave this world peacefully, in a humane way, with dignity, surrounded by people who love him. He'd given so much love to so many people throughout the years in our wee house. He deserved to go in the most peaceful way possible. After it was over and many tears had been shed, we spent some time with him in the room and just stroked him and just said our own private goodbyes. And man, it was so sad. It was so sad. But watching him afterwards, we could see all that discomfort was gone, all the pain was gone, and he was finally at peace, you know.
Pop this in here. His heart stopped. Hey. Look, I think he just went to sleep. Hey. Didn't you, wee man? I think he's made the right decision. I know it wasn't an easy one, but you know, you're thinking of him.
The vet clinic, they offered to bury Salem for us, and this was probably the easiest thing for us, but we just knew that it wasn't the right thing for us. I don't know where the vet clinic was going to bury him, but whatever it was, it's not where he belonged. He was the holiday park cat. He lived in this house in the holiday park. We had to bring him home and lay him to rest where he belongs, at home. The vet clinic were so great. They put him in a wee box. They wrapped him up, and they actually put a little piece of paper on the box, Salem Brady, which is my surname, which I thought was really nice. And we popped him back in his basket into the car, and we made the journey back home to what now felt like a really empty wee house. We found a little quiet place just directly across from the house in the top corner of the park next to the chickens, and that's where we decided to bury him. I have to admit that I completely underestimated how difficult it is to dig a hole. It's had to be a deep hole, and I'd never dug a hole before. I didn't think it was going to be this difficult. I was on my knees with a hammer, shovel, scooping it out with my hands. It took hours and hours. My arms were killing me after hours and hours of clawing away at the earth. And the whole time I was just thinking, he's relying on me to do this for him. No one else would do this for this cat. I don't even want to think of how other people would have disposed of his body, but he didn't deserve that, and I wasn't going to let that happen. After we buried him, we took a little time around that area just to say our own private little goodbye words to Salem, and we just both felt so fortunate and lucky to have that closure that we thought we weren't going to have. So this cat had a huge impact on us, but not just us. He had an impact on loads of people, and after hearing about his death, previous occupants of this wee house, old roommates of Salem's began sharing their memories, old photos, and just generally mourning his passing. He impacted so many people here, and ultimately I think he accomplished what everyone hopes to accomplish in their life, not just cats, but humans as well. It seems to me that on its most basic level, the whole point of life is to accomplish three things. 1, to have a positive impact on the world and the people around us. 2, to live a long life. And 3, to leave behind some sort of legacy. Now at this point, we know Salem has accomplished 2 of these points. We know he had a positive impact on the world and the people around him. That's evident from the testimonies of people when they found out about his passing. 2, we know he lived a long life because he was deaf and had all that grey hair, and he was this no cat. Number 3, leaving a legacy behind. That's something that I'm going to help him with. Now tomorrow, we will leave this house, but I want the people who live here after us, and the people who live here after them, and the people who live here after them, and the people who live here after them, and every generation of people who live in this house to know whose house they're living in. Salem's house.